We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are members of a global family, each one playing a particular part and working together for the advancement of all. Join me, Jean Walters, on an amazing journey that will deepen and expand your awareness and your growth in knowing the truth, and together we will live in the light.
Jean, this sounds like a really interesting podcast coming up. I'd like to start with basics. Jean, I consider myself a beginner when it comes to spiritual matters. You said in the opening of the podcast that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. What does that mean?
That's a great question, isn't it? So the thing is that Einstein came up with this a while back. He called it the unified field. And what he was telling us is that there's one field of energy in which we all live, breathe, and have our being. He called it the unified field. But since that time, it's been called the holographic field. It's been called the quantum field. The bottom line is it's God. So this field of energy that we live in is what we have come to know as God, meaning that you're in this field of energy, I'm in this field of energy, everyone is in this field of energy. So in our earthly life, we have come to identify ourselves as this body. We come to identify ourselves as my name is Jean, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, I'm a counselor. And I have all these different roles that I play, and I've identified with them, but they are just roles. And all the things that have happened in our life are stories that we've told ourselves. The story of getting married, the story of having a particular work, job, whatever. So we've basically encumbered ourselves with a lot of stories that are to identify who we are, and a physical body to identify who we are, and a name, and so forth and so on. But the truth of it is that we push all of that away. We come back to one thing. We are the unified field. We are this energy that's called the unified field. We are this energy that is love. So the unified field is made up of love. And so that means we are made up of love. So when we peel back all the layers and all the identifications, and, when we think of us Americans and women and blah, 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 when we peel it all away, what we come back to is a simple essence. And that essence is our deepest being. And that's one of the reasons why I encourage people to meditate and get involved in their quiet self, into the quiet space of who they really are, because then they can begin to sense that essence, that presence within them that is deeper than all the roles and deeper than all the ways that we've identified ourselves, and begin to see that we are truly vast, beautiful, vast beings. And I don't know if that answered your question, because you said you were a beginner, but people have come to me and said, "What is God?" And I go through the same kind of thing. It's not a personality. We were led to believe it was a personality. It's a he. We were led to believe that it's a guy in a rocking chair that says, "Oh, you're good and you're bad," and it's just very arbitrary. But the truth of it is, when we go deep in, we find out we are this beautiful essence of love. And we are that essence of God then. And that makes us exalted beings. And that's a beautiful thing, because that means we don't have to carry around guilt, and we don't have to carry around shame, and we don't have to carry around a lot of things that we were taught that were part of us.
That is amazing, because we were taught, shame on you, or don't you feel guilty about such and such?
Not enough. Not enough. Yeah. That's why it's so important to understand that that when we push all that aside, we have to look at the truth and the untruth. The truth is we are exalted, beautiful, loving beings, but we have to connect with that, because otherwise we're connecting with a story that says you're not enough, you should be ashamed, etc., etc. I mean, we have volumes of that sort of thing. We call that the ego. And the ego is the false self. The ego is the false self that says, you are this body and you're supposed to make A's at school and you're supposed to be nice to your sister or something like that, and it has a lot of ideas that really, a lot of them are just not doable. And a lot of them don't fit who we are. If I'm taught, I took an IQ test one time and it was saying something about I should be like a graphic, work as a graphic designer. And I'm thinking, I am so not a graphic designer. Who I am is a connector. I connect with people. I feel their essence. I guide them. I can feel where they're off and where they're on, and I can guide them to the truth. That does not fit with a drawing board in front of me. So many ways that we've measured ourselves have been incorrect.
Have you learned what your role is?
I don't have a role per se, but I do have a mission. And the mission is really not for myself, first of all, is to really experience the light, be the light, live as the light, but also guide other people to it. Because then we're really living from a place of unlimited expansion. And that's what we're all meant to do. We're just going to get there in our own way. Everybody kind of gets there in their own way.
Are you talking about realizing this in the physical form we're in now?
Yeah.
Or only when we're on the spiritual side?
Well, we're always in the spiritual side. We're always, every minute, all the time, we're in the spiritual side. It's just that we have identified so much as a physical being that we believe that's who we are. But who pumps your heart? Who makes sure that blood reaches all those organs in your body? Who makes sure that your food digests? Do you do it? Do you tell your liver to do this and your gallbladder to do that? You don't, because there's a mechanism within you that runs the whole show, and so we've bought into this idea that we're in charge. We're not in charge. We can pretend that we can have goals and we can aspire to those goals, but the truth of the being that this essence that we are is always there. That's why Jesus said, God is closer to you than the breath you breathe, because you're breathing God. You're in that essence, that spirit of God at all times. I like to call it the universe because people have gotten so messed up with the word God. They've made it into a being. They made it into a personality. And I think it's created so much confusion. So I like the idea of just calling it the universe or the quantum field, because then people can kind of get their head wrapped around that.
Why aren't we here having a physical experience?
To learn. We're here learning. When we sort of made an agreement at some point, and this was way beyond in the cosmos, to experience this earth life. First of all, it's kind of fun. But secondly, we're learning about compassion. We're learning about creativity. We're learning about expression. We're learning about relationships, how to relate, how to forgive. There's so many cool lessons that we're here to learn. And then this gives us an opportunity to learn them. So it's not a punishment. It's not a punishment. In fact, I kind of see like souls lined up. When's my turn? Can I go there? Because I think we learn the most by conflicts. Sometimes, I don't like that person, and we come up with the weirdest reasons to not like somebody, But the bottom line is all we're doing is looking at form again. So to be here and to really go deeper, to really see that in every body there's a soul, in every person there's something deeper, then we can move past all the goopy stuff, as I call it, and we can actually see the essence of that person. And then what's not to love? Because the essence is always beautiful. And the outers has been so messed up with all kinds of crazy beliefs and ideas, like we were talking shame and all that. Those are just beliefs. That, belief is a thought that you think over and over. So whoever taught you to be ashamed knew about shame because they were taught shame. And so they passed that on to the next generation and the next person. And the bottom line is, we can say the moon is made out of green cheese over and over, but it doesn't mean that it is. So we have to be able to sort of weave through it all and come with the truth. The truth is always inside. So you're always close to the truth, but you have to look for it. You have to seek it. You have to feel it.
I've heard you use the term do the work.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean, and how do we do it?
Okay. Look at the conflict in your life, any conflict that you see in your life, and that's your work. Because somehow or other, through misinterpretation or whatever, we've created a conflict. We created it. And so we look at that conflict and we begin to understand why it's there and what is there to teach us. A great question is always, what am I to learn from this? And when we ask that question and we take responsibility for our learning, not like I have to make that guy a better guy, or, I don't like him because he's a different race or ethnic group or something or other, then we're heading off down the road in a false reality. So the work is actually sort of peeling things away until we can reach that place of presence, that inner place of presence, and we can actually connect with the truth of who we are. That because we have been so infiltrated with the idea that the intellect is more important than intuition, people get lauded over how many degrees they have and so forth. That's one of the reasons I don't refer much to mine, because I want to be known more for who I am rather than all those initials. So we laud people with all kinds of initials behind their name, and yet all we're doing is putting in their mind, their valuable, wonderful mind, ideas that someone experienced, how to make a rocket or whatever. And those are nice things, but none of it has to do with you as a being. Okay. So the intellect, we've lauded the intellect to the exclusion of the intuition, the intuitive side, and everybody has it. Even if they don't pay attention, they have it. That intuitive side is the part that will lead them to their deeper self, their deeper essence. It's a guide. It's a feeling. And the more we cultivate it, the more we truly understand ourselves. And that is the work. But there's lots of ways to sort of peel that stuff away to where we can understand all that.
How does a person know if they are really reaching their interior, or if it's their mind just saying, oh, you're making this up?
Yeah. Well, the ego will always try to convince you you're making it up. But that's why intuition is so important, because does it feel right? Now, there's a saying that you can't fool children or animals because they know. And they know beyond intellect because they don't have intellect. And so if they feel something is right or they like a person, they know it. And so that's what we're talking about, is going back to that simplicity, the simplicity of having that knowing. You can't, if they decide something's good or they don't like it, you're not going to convince them intellectually, because their knowing is strong. So that's what we want to do, is we want to bring ourselves back to the innocence of childhood. That's why Jesus said, let the children come, because they are truthful, because they're invulnerable, because that truth that they are is is solid, and then we convince them otherwise. And we retrain them, But we still have it. We still have it within.
Where do we go to find it? How do we find it?
Well, I was listening to a story about a Buddhist monk they were out in this Grand Master who was taking his student out to the woods, and they were sitting on a log eating lunch, and they were talking about the student is so eager, and he's saying, well, how do I get there? How do I get there? How do I know? And the master said, shh, can you hear this mountain stream? And it was like he didn't hear the mountain stream, so he had to stop and listen to the mountain stream. And finally, I hear it. And then so the master just went on and ate his lunch. And so the student listened for a second or two and then went, but then how do I get to the presence? How to get to the presence? And when the master was teaching him to be quiet and listen. So we listen to our heart. We listen to the stillness. We give ourselves some time every day to be still, to be quiet, to listen. So maybe we start with listening to the mountain stream, and maybe we start by listening to the traffic, but we just listen deeply until we can begin to connect with a deeper essence. And that's what I do with some of the meditations. We listen to our breath. We listen to stillness inside. We can listen to our heart pumping. If we listen, we can hear it all. But we're so programmed to be loud. We're so programmed to just be loud in life, so that, especially in the Western world, the Eastern world, I think, is a lot more adept at this sort of thing. But we have to do the work. We have to learn how to take control of the mind. That's the real work, to take control of the mind. The mind is a tool. And when it runs us, it's really nasty. But when we take control of the mind as a tool, then we can be brilliant. So we use our mind we direct it to what we want. So let's say somebody decides they don't like you for whatever reason. Usually they have silly reasons. And then that bothers you. So now this beautiful mind has told you that it's not okay to not be liked by everyone. And of course, that's a silly, silly, silly edict. Because everybody didn't like Jesus, and they didn't like Buddha, and there's a lot of people. So we learn how to look at that person and realize they have a wound. Because if they don't like someone, it's their wound. It's not you, it's their wound. Okay? And when we begin to understand that, we have now taken control of our mind. And we've taught ourselves that whatever anyone thinks about us is irrelevant to who we are. That's a beautiful thing to learn. What would life be like in our world if we all knew that? It would be awesome. It would be awesome. So when we know it, when we learn it, then in some ways we're sort of obligated to teach other people when that's a possibility. It's not like we want to beat them up with it or anything, but we live it, and we're teaching as we live it.
Do you have any online tools that people could start exploring?
Well, I have a lot of podcasts, and they include a lot of information. And I have books, and you can get them as ebooks, so that's online. So and then of course I have meditations online on the YouTube. So all of that's available. There's so much information online right now that people can begin to learn. But I guess the main thing is to observe their mind and see what they're doing with it. Are they choosing to love, or are they choosing to hate? There's always a choice, always a choice. Babies don't hate. When they come into the world, they're all gooey and lubby and smiley and giggly, right? They are. And so when do they change? When do they change to say, I don't like people who are different from me? They have to be taught that. So when do they decide to be afraid? They have to be taught that. So what we're really actually doing is just going back to our unique nature of our innocence, the beauty of how we came into this world, because babies are intuitive. They feel. They don't have words to tell you, but they feel it. So we're going back to what we came in to do, but we're putting it into a form now that we can live it consciously. And I call that living in the light.
And we will learn much more in future podcasts to live in the light. Jean, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
You've been listening to Jean Walters' Live in the Light podcast. Jean's passion is helping people live in the light. A longtime student and teacher of metaphysics, Jean aims to supply you with the tools you need to help you see the light that's within you. Jean Walters is a personal growth consultant, teacher, and lecturer. She offers dream interpretation services and Akashic record readings. Jean is also an international best-selling author of a growing library of enlightening books. Great reading for seekers and those who want to understand universal law, intuition, and develop deep understanding and personal awareness. Jean's website is spiritualtransformation.com. She offers 2 YouTube channels, at Jean M. Walters and at Jean Walters 7221. Contact Jean's office by phone at 314-566-5231. 314-566-5231. Her email address is jean@spiritualtransformation.com. Thanks for joining us for Jean Walters' Live in the Light podcast.